Hello, everyone, and welcome to the FM show. On this week's episode, we get philosophical. How do you instill your philosophy on a new club? Is it the same wherever you go? Or do you adapt to what's in front of you? Let's get started. Welcome to the FM show. I'm Tony Jameson, and joining me, as always, is RDF Tactics and producer Steve. Aaron, Steve, how are we?
Well, Aaron is doing fine, but RDF Tactics, well, he's a little bit heartbroken. Football Manager has left RDF a bit broken at the moment, but hoping RDF recovers. But me, Aaron, I'm doing fine at the moment.
I like the fact you've managed to differentiate those two characters from the start and go, right, listen, right, we're going to break the wall right now, okay? And you've instantly decided, right, here's the truth. Okay, so let's get to the bottom of this then. What's wrong in the world of RDF?
It's that thing where things are going perfect 1 minute and then things just start crumbling the next. I lost one game and then all of a sudden we can't even score a goal at the moment. So yeah, that's what's happening at the moment.
Oh, we're back into RDF's troubles. I lost a game last week. Oh, it was dreadful.
We're scoring the woodwork.
I could have sworn, Aaron, I saw you posting on social media this week about winning the title in Romania.
Exactly. And then things just crumble. But I've got this thing. I think we explained before about this perfect thing that I love. Perfection. I just love perfection. If I win it once, then I believe I should be the favourite and win it every year after that. That's I don't know. It's probably not nice, but it's at the same time, sometimes I do feel that's why I do well. Not accepting a loss. I can't.
I would hate to play for you. I really would.
I literally released my goalkeeper because he let one. I was like, if you let another shot on target in, I'm selling you. And then I tried to offer him out. Nobody wanted him. Straight release. I've had enough.
Oh, sorry. Offering him out, you mean you sold him, not because offering out can imply something.
Nobody wanted him. No bids came in, so I'm like, I'm just going to take a complete loss and I just released him. Literally just press release. I was in that moment where I've lost. He's just conceding every shot on target. So I ran out of patience. It got to the end of the game. I released him. But then you get that little thing and like 2 seconds later that probably shouldn't have done that. Probably should have done that. And I'm live.
Listen to that, Aaron.
I can't load it back again because I'm live.
I've just got visions. I've got visions of RDF's team bus leaving with the goalkeeper just stood at the stadium, just like, see ya, bye.
Literally, if you're my team and we're winning, it's literally the best place for you to be. But if we're losing, it's just don't be around. Don't be around. Or don't mess up.
This sounds stressful, doesn't it? Like if you're not the Invincibles, then you're getting sold. This is literally. Oh, this is pressure, Steve. Pressure. Life's not the same for you in Florence, is it? Things must be. I'm presuming things are calmer in producer Steve world.
Well, I did, as we discussed in the last episode, have a bit of a run, 2 defeats in a row, including to bottom of the table Crotone. After that game, actually, and after that episode, I then very much got out-passed and out-technically done by Sassuolo in the next game, which was quite a chastening moment because the passing football technical ability is a real part of the, Steve ball, hanky ball, whatever you want to call it, DNA. So it was very... And Sassuolo just had us... you play some games, you're like, passing and controlling possession is what we do. They're just doing it better than us. So that was very chastening. However, beyond that, I did take advice as we spoke about it with regards to chance conversion, finishing improvement, set pieces, looking at them both in defending set pieces, but also delivery. So 2 things in that. Within training, in your set piece section, you've obviously got your red things that you can change in your set piece training. Defending is one option. Doing offensive practice too, but you can also practice get your set piece takers to just focus on the delivery, just do a session on that. So I was like, interesting, okay. Did that coupled with going through my takers again, because if you do a long save, if you Tony, if you establish a dynasty and you
And you've not released everyone because you conceded a shot on target.
You kind of, there's stuff to do. So your players do change through, but you don't necessarily always. It's like that dusty cupboard in the corner of the kitchen. You don't necessarily always go through. Sometimes you need to declutter, rearrange. It's a bit like that for set pieces sometimes, right? So gone through, and I've gone through and realised I've got some really good new set piece takers. Julian Alvarez, for example. So I've got him taking all of them on one side. Sergio Gomez, my left back, taking them on the other. Coupled with delivery training, now my set pieces are looking a lot sharper than they were before. To the point where my next game was Inter, who have been our title Scudetto rivals in this season. Won on 3-1. One was on the counter-attack. And the final piece, the cherry on the cake, was a 2-1 on the counter-attack, sorry. Third goal was a corner in 9 minutes. Direct corner. So it makes a difference. If I hadn't made those changes, holistically around being more potent around set pieces, as well as defending them better, wouldn't have got a goal, and there wouldn't be, you can have an underlying way of playing, but just do everything. Anyway, so my week has been a lot better, actually. All in all.
I like that. And then you know what? That's proof, though, that no matter how much we play the game, you can always learn something, can't you? And you can take something away from the podcast. But I've not thought of that. Actually, I'm going to instill that. I've had a reasonable week as well. I was on a bit of a precipice with Leeds in my current save at the minute. We've overachieved last year and got to the Champions League by finishing 5th because the Champions League format changes in the future. So we got the Champions League, and I was going, this is pretty good. Started really badly in season 2, despite bringing in much better players. The players are taking a bit of the time to gel. So our form has slumped to see us 15th after about 11 games. But we have picked up. We've won 6 on the bounce now, including a 10-1 win in Europe. So with 10 men as well, I add. So so we're going to start talking about a few things that will reference what we've just chatted about at the start of the show there as we keep going through. Now, we will, of course, talk about last week's episode, obviously, all about transfers we've just touched upon there. And as always, lovely comments from listeners about not just last week's show, but other shows as well that we've done, Steve. So, for example, Why Always CT on Spotify has left a lovely comment here that says, really enjoyed this. I'm a Football Manager console player and don't go into depth as much as most PC gamers. Overall, fantastic stuff, lads. Hope there's lots more to come. And you know what? Why always? There is loads more to come. Thank you for your comment.
Yes, we also have a comment from Grizzy Wild as well. He left a comment relating to episode 1 and what they do with pre-season. So his pre-season or their pre-season schedule, I always go for heavy to get them fitter right away. The harder I work players pre-season, the less rest they need during the season. They can do more tactical skill work during the season instead of being sat on their bums between the games, but might get 2 or 3 muscle pulls in an intense pre-season. But generally, the fitness levels remain good for the whole season. 6 games is ideal, and I managed them all to make sure every player gets the required minutes.
There you go. Nice overlapping with a lot of things that we were saying too as well, which shows that it wasn't just what we reckon other people do similar as well. And actually, in the context of, hitting heavy physically, to the only consequence being minor couple of day muscle pulls versus longer injuries is it's good. It's good. So thank you for that. So in Discord, SC242424, that's 24 3 times, not 24 24 times, thankfully. That is a lovely message. And it was another good episode. Glad that you guys are back and that the hiatus was far too long. It's very kind. Thank you. When I'm at a club that's hopefully on the rise, put a good chunk of the fee as payable after 50 league games. So this is in context of transfers that we were talking about previous episodes. So the transfer fee, we mentioned that the clauses you can add, fee after 50 league games, big chunk of it, it's because if the player has developed, there's a good chance will be in a top division or Europe, so should then be able to afford that. If they haven't, then I'll sell him before he gets to any more than 49 games. So that obviously is the risk. If you're an upwardly mobile and want to be an upwardly mobile club, you can slightly promise for a financial future that you may or may not have. The obvious potential downside of that is you've got an indispensable player who you're now like, I can't use him because we can't afford to. So that is the risk of
Yeah.
it. But, you know, fundamentally, the clauses thing is that kind of.
Yeah.
I mentioned it with goals in the last episode. If you're promising 4 or 5 million after 20 goals, I imagine if a striker's getting you or a player's getting you 20 goals, that's probably going to mean you're doing all right, which is probably going to be worth the 4 or 5 million to get those goals from elsewhere. So it is a really useful way of spreading out the transfer cost rather than just going, here's 25 million cash, no questions asked, you know. So thank you for that SC242424.
Absolutely. Now, Kevin V90NL has got in touch on Discord saying, lovely episode again, lads. Perfecting transfers is a thing of history for me now since I play the game in the way I like a head coach does. Okay, so head coach style football rather than being hands-on. So I only set desired transfer targets, but from there on, it's all up to my director of football if the transfers and contracts are being realised or that I have to deal with some minor setbacks in my planning. Love how this adds an extra layer of realism as to how IRL football actually works nowadays. The Sir Alex/Wenger times of managing and deciding everything are a thing of the past now. Oh, sad, isn't it, to think that, you know, that's it's all been and gone, that I'm now a retro football manager, but I guess we kind of knew that, to be honest. But yes, you're right. Obviously, head coach does do a lot less than a traditional manager per se, and those director of football saves are a thing that are definitely increasing in popularity. Yeah. So cracking work with that, Kevin. Do, of course, let us know how you get on towards the end of the season, and does that approach work for you? Of course, if you do want to get in touch and send us a message like those, you can find us on the FM Show Pod on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and of course, you can come and join us on the Discord server with the link in the description of the podcast. Or if you want to send us an email, it's the FM Show Pod. That's the FM Show Pod at gmail.com. And of course, remember, follow the FM Show wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure that RSS feed points there. And if that's not enough, gentlemen, you can also support the podcast via Patreon, where you can sign up to be a member of the FM Show team, which gives you exclusive bonus content, early access to public episodes, and a private Discord channel, amongst other things. All of this from as little as £3 a month. To sign up, visit patreon.com/the FM Show Pod and become a member, just like Scott Lloyd did this week. Appreciate you, Scott. So that is the initial comments read out. This episode, however, Steve, is inspired by an email that we received.
It is indeed. It's inspired by one of you guys. That's Joseph Beach. So thanks for emailing in, Joseph, to the fmshowpod at gmail.com, as you can all do. And Joseph says, hello, FM Show team. Hello, Joseph. I'm new to the podcast, but have been catching up slowly, working my way through previous shows. My current save is Oldham in the conference. Now, when we were planning this, it took me a second to be like, oh, Oldham are in the conference. My God, you know, it's funny how these things catch up in you, right? So Oldham in the conference, in Joseph's save, currently sitting in the playoffs in the first season, doing pretty well. So that's, you know, that's good. But I probably would be doing better if I hadn't given myself a rule for this save, and that rule being use a target forward. Do you have any tactics or tips for using a target forward in the game? There aren't many options online to help, but the ultimate goal is to get the man, the myth, the legend, Andy Carroll in my team, and obviously eventual promotion to the Prem. Love the podcast, guys. It really has helped my save out, and you all seem like genuinely nice people. Much love, Joe. Well then.
I love that. That's a beautiful email. Thanks, Joe. I guess we'll deal with the initial query first, which is the use of target forwards specifically, and then after that, we'll talk about the wider topic, which I suppose is regarding instilling a philosophy at the club. Do, of course, let us know if you instill any rules on your own saves as well, because there is a level of enjoyment to be had with Football Manager, just leaving it as it is and playing the game there straight from the box. But there's also a nice way in it of just adding little tweaks in there just to make it harder or make it more challenging for yourself. So let's open this up. Steve, Aaron, I know that usually everyone's going to be going target forwards, right? Tony's going to start talking for the next hour. I'm going to let you two drive first of all. So Aaron, we'll start with yourself there. Target forwards. Any specific tips?
Supply. Make sure the target forward has supply, but also make sure the target forward can also supply it for others. So a target forward, it depends on, you've got two duties, right? Support, attack. Support, you kind of want him to hold up and bring others in play. And then on the attack, you actually kind of want him to be a goal scorer. But a target forward, nonetheless, is always going to be looking to bring other players in. In Football Manager, on the tactics screen, so if you go tactics on the left, your assistant manager at the very start of the game will ask you to choose a tactical style to start with. If you've got a pre-tactic before that, you can load that up. But we will be looking at, just quickly, we'll just look at wing play for an example. If I choose that formation, we could use a 4-2-2 or 4-3-3. It depends on you, but I would go for 4-4-2 personally, because I just mentioned about the target forward bringing in other players. And it's as simply, you could just change, we've got a DLF, we'll just change it to a target forward. And what we're looking at the moment is a lot of supply from the wider areas. We've got wingers supplying the target forward on both flanks, but also up top, he's got someone that he can bring in, which is the advanced forward. So for me, when it comes to a target forward, I like to build around that target forward. Make sure he's got a lot of supply, but also make sure he can bring other players in.
Okay, and it is about bringing the ball to the target forward, Steve. So, I mean, we might be tempted to look at work the ball into the box, but let's face it, we want to be slunging those crosses in, right?
Well, it's sort of interesting, really, in terms of depends on the sort of game. I was thinking about it in terms of mentality switching, which is something we'll go into more detail on future episodes, I think, because it struck me that target forward could be quite useful when you're on a cautious mentality, because it's your outball. So if you're needing to keep your defensive solidity and then relieve the pressure, this obviously, as we'll go on to in talking about philosophy, low technical ability is not top of my list in terms of the sort of player I would normally go for. However, I do have Lorenzo Luca on my Fiorentina set currently. So he's like one of the archetypes for target forward wonderkid type players. Yeah. The thing that is surprising about building your attack around a player like Luca or any sort of target forward, could be Andy Carroll, for example, is how much they can kind of be treated like a bit of a beefy playmaker, you know? Yeah. So on support mode, as Aaron was alluding to, they do drop in and they do offer that out ball. So if you've got players who have got good long range passing, for example, and can do a lovely diagonal, a lovely ball over the top 40, 50 yards, you've got a guy there that can then hold it up and bring in your wide players. So obviously, as you guys have mentioned, flinging those crosses into the boxes, of course, that is one of the primary weapons. And as we were talking about the first section of the show, set pieces, another goal I scored from set pieces, a corner of the season, was, of course, Lorenzo Luca. His first goal for us, of course. Last minute winner header. Exactly what I wanted. But using the target forward to drop in, almost overlapping in what a deep lying forward might do. In some respects, to bring in your inside forwards or inverted wingers so that it drops down, they come in narrowly too, is another way of thinking about that player in that position.
And that's the thing. I think you look at this sort of what you would view as a target forward, and it's that big, strong number 9. That's what you've got in your head straight away, isn't it? So you're looking at the kind of attributes that you're going to need. So you're going to want things like jumping reach straight away. Like, you might want heading, you want strength, but you also want things like anticipation, you might want to look for player traits of, holds the ball up, comes deep to get the ball. That could be depending on how you want to play. You're saying there, Steve, about being the out. Do you want comes deep to collect the ball? And that's probably for a target forward on support. If you're a target forward on attack, then really you just want aggression. You want anticipation. You want decision making. Like, you want to be getting them like up and being the main guy, Aaron, right?
Yeah, exactly. He's gonna be the one that's leading your line. And I was gonna say, because I've also tested around the target forward as well, but I also tested and played with the passing directness, and I felt that a target forward is actually still pretty effective if you're using shorter passing. What I did notice is when my team moved into the final third, then they would often then look for the target forward. So we wasn't starting our attacks literally looking for the target forward. It was more so now we've approached our play, because passing directness is all about your approach play, how you're approaching towards the goal. So we'll still have our short play, but then once it gets into the final third, you will notice that actually a lot of your attacks is directed to that target forward. So still, even though you are using shorter passes, it's still very, very useful for your target forward to be able to jump and head the ball, because they are still the focus of your attacks in that final third.
I think also as well, and this will come onto it in terms of the wider philosophy too, the individual players you're looking at, especially if you're at the level of Oldham, right? The players like that are going to have elite specific abilities. For example, finishing may not be one of them. So you might want to think about the fact that, your target forward, or I think fridge freezer is how my former TIFO colleague JJ Baldwin said, they will have elite, like top, green 16 plus attributes in certain respects, or relative to the level that you're at, but their finishing might be terrible. So you might want to use that specific player in the assisting role. If the finishing is great, but their other stuff isn't that good, you might want to do what Aaron just suggested.
And that's exactly it. Like what are you using your target forward for? Are you using your target forward as your goal scorer? Then that means you're going to be target forward on attack, and you are going to need finishing. Or if it's going to be the target forward is going to be the man who gets the supply, you can have target forward on support with an advanced forward next to him. That you can bring the play in. You can aim. You can have your goalkeeper distribute the ball to the target forward. You can bypass the midfield. They're going to come deep. Or if you're playing them up top, maybe pair them with the poacher possibly, because then if he doesn't score, then you know what? His little mate next to him, he might score.
Around,
so exactly. So
small man, big man.
Yes,
I mean, football was built on big man, little man, right? Or if you're an FM23, big man and bigger man. That seems to be the way.
That's the way. That's the way.
Get it right. Yeah. But yeah, of course, if anyone who's listening has had success with target forwards, do of course let us know. Or if you've struggled and you need a bit of help, and these sorts of things have maybe sort of went, oh God, of course, not thought of it that way. Do of course let us know, or any suggestions of who might be a rather handy target forward in the lower divisions. I will shout out one player, because you know me, I tend not to play with above the leagues, really, these Premier Leagues and all that sort of stuff, right? Lower league, a big shout for Tom Bloxham, who I think starts at Shrewsbury. He's 6'5". He's 19 or 20 at the start of the game. Big, strong centre forward, target forward style player, with a player trait of attempts overhead kicks. I am getting that guy in straight away, right? That's,
it would be funny though. I'm whipping the crosses in for you to head the ball, and you've got your target forward just overhead kick.
100%. Heading is old school. Overhead kicks are the way to go, right?
It's a new way.
We've got a live show coming up on Monday, the 6th of November in Nottingham at the Canal House. It's part of the Nottingham Comedy Festival. If you're interested in coming to see the FM show live, seeing myself, seeing producer Steve, seeing RDF Tactics in person, then there's a ticket link in the description below. The tickets are priced at £5. Come and see the show. Come and hang out afterwards. We'll do a bit of a meet and greet. We'll do a bit of a chat. We'll talk FM. Bring your stories. Bring Matt Doherty if you can. But yeah, Monday the 6th of November, the Canal House in Nottingham, £5. Ticket link in the description below. Get your tickets. Come and hang out. It's going to be fantastic. Okay, so Joe has, as we discussed there, decided that in his save, he's using a target forward, okay? Now, for us, I guess that sort of got our brains working towards philosophy and the idea that that's how he's building his team, that's how he's going to get Oldham to play. Now, we chatted about this a few weeks ago, ironically, Joe, about the idea of bringing our philosophy to certain sides in FM. Obviously, we've already touched upon Aaron has to have the Invincibles or nothing. Steve has to be able to play in Florence.
Yeah.
And that's sort of where we are, really. And of course, me, I'm very much a case of, well, if you can get the day off work, you can be part of the team, right? That's how things are working. So, but you know what? Let's go a bit deeper. Okay? Let's talk about the philosophies, okay? Steve, I'm going to come to you first of all now, okay? So talk me through the philosophy that you have when you take on a new team, okay, say you're starting this new save, which is kind of the journey that we've got with the start of this podcast series right now. You're there, you've had a look around, you've obviously passed the interview, you're talking to everyone. Do you have an idea in mind as to what you're going to want from these players that are in front of you, the club? Like, obviously the board have given you a certain vision that they want you to play towards. The fans have got their idea of how their football should be played, but more importantly, producer Steve has a vision of how football should be played.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
And how should football be played, Steve?
It should be, as a doctrine. And actually, going back to our first episode of the new era, when it comes to choosing the saves that you choose, that philosophy, the type of team that's already there, is actually quite important. So I'd already select a team that has a high technical ability, that's going to play the ball on the ground a bit more than hoofing it long. I like it on the carpet. I'm from the Arsene Wenger school of football philosophy, essentially. Like my technical football, quick combinations, triangles everywhere, that sort of stuff. What would be described more aesthetic, beautiful football than some of the more potentially unfairly, disparagingly agricultural, long ball, physical stuff. I sort of like that soft life passing sort of thing. And generally speaking, it's built on a back four out of possession. But then once you're into possession, depending on the context, that would change to either a back three with one of the fullbacks inverting to sort of add a double pivot in possession to the midfielders. So you've got a in possession block of 5, and then to push up one of the midfielders. So you've got 5 and 5, basically. Or if I was being a bit more avant-garde, I would push up both my wing backs, have narrower forwards, so I'd end up with a box midfield. So 4 box, 2 centre backs, 2 midfielders. Part of that has been influenced by the fact that the league are playing in as well. So Serie A, there's a lot of teams that have the Catenaccio chain, 5 defenders, 2 deep line midfielders. It's a real mess to get through. So that does mean that you would end up trying to put as many forwards as far up the pitch as you can. So, and within that, versatility of the players that I buy is part of it too. So I'm increasingly looking for players that can do multiple positions. And so a game I played recently, actually, I had an anchor and then 2 ball-playing defenders, inverted wing, fullback on defend, and those 4 players all swapped within those 4 roles mid-game, in-game, based on fitness, based on one having a yellow card, so putting them slightly further out of the firing line, etc. So being able to do that, so versatility as a philosophy too, but within a very much a technical football paradigm.
Yeah.
Okay. It's very well thought out answer,
More than
Steve.
I
I like
realised.
that. It's got my but isn't it interesting though? Like, because we probably do just go like, oh yeah, like this is how I want to play the game, and it's only when you start explaining it, you're like, oh, actually, I really do have a way of how I want this to be, and how do I make this work in my save? Like, Aaron, I mean, I guess we give you the mic now, right? Talk to us. Is every right? Okay, I'm gonna ask the elephant in the room first of all. Is every save got the same philosophy?
No, I'm a bit like
losing is not an option.
I'm a bit like Steve. So I'm not. So before it was always I like to play positive. It's always on the front foot, whether it's more direct hitting the teams with pace or if it's tiki taka ish, and then trying to overwhelm the opponents that way. But it's always been on the front foot, so it was always proactive rather than reactive. But the first thing when I look at my players at the club, at a new club, is similar. Are they versatile? That's literally one thing. Are they versatile? So my thing is like when I'm in game, I don't like. It's very difficult to have 2 or 3 good right backs. So having a centre back, natural centre back that can just shift to a right back, or a DM that's sitting on the bench but can also come in at right back, because you're not always going to have. Even if you have 3 right backs, it's not always going to be fit at all times. You're going to have parts of the season where you've only got 1 fit right back, and then he's on a yellow card or something during the game. You need to take him off, and you've got that versatile player ready to come in and do a job. And I really love that. They're kind of my weak links. So I don't really sell players that are versatile. They might not be up there with the rest of the squad, but the first players that I really do look to sell are what those one-dimensional sort of players that you can only do this. That doesn't fit what we're trying to do. you're gone, and you can't really do anything else. Wherever if you're a right back, a right back that's very defensive, but you can also play left back, you actually will be helpful for us during the line, I feel. So that's my sort of thing. Recently, I have discovered, though, I've gone back to all my saves. I have discovered I love a Segundo Volante. Every
Ooh,
team,
yes.
every team I've gone has got one. And it happens naturally. So I always have this DM. You have to defend. So if you're defending all the time, we need someone that can be that link. And you kind of really got two options, Volante or Roman playmaker. And sometimes you don't have that Roman playmaker. It's very, very difficult to find a DM that can create, but also can defend at the same time. So I'll go for like a type of bully, a physical guy that can be a Segundo Volante and just bully their way through running forward. They're very good defensively, but going forward, they don't have to be great. They just use their physical attributes and just bully. That's my thing, yeah.
Let's put a pin in that bit, because it's very interesting you mentioned Segundo Volante. They will come on in the next part of the chat. I'm going to explain my philosophy as well at this point. Okay, now, most people obviously already sat on their sofas or in their cars or on their phones or wherever you're listening to the podcast going, right, Tony's going to tell us about how he can get the ball from the goalkeeper to the big striker as quick as possible, right, on the muddy pitch that has just been driven over by a tractor, right? Well, you know what? Sit down, folks. Not actually true, believe it or not. Okay. Now, the reason obviously I hark back to the good old days of 90s football, right, is that's obviously when I was growing up, okay? But if I'm looking to instill a philosophy on my sides these days, I'm not quite as front foot football as Aaron. Yeah. I like possession. I like the football. I like to have a lot of the football, okay? I like slow build-up. I like to take my time. I like to look for space. I like to look for pockets. I like to have those little triangles that Steve's talking about, not working the ball. I want to drag teams out of position and then play those little passes in behind. And that's when my quick players start to break through. So if I've got the ball, I like to retain it. And then when there's a space, we break quickly. That's what we do. And we get into those pockets. We get in behind. So we might sit slightly deeper than maybe we'd probably like to. Because again, I tend to play lower level teams or mid-range teams. I'm very rarely the favorite in a game. So I've got to be able to soak up pressure, right? And I've got to be able to sit with the ball, because there's no point me going flying out. And if I'm playing against the league champions, they're just going to pick me off. So I've got to be comfortable taking a bit of time going, right, we will get our chance. Don't worry, we will get our chance. We're going to be okay. So we need some big, strong defenders. We need people who can jump. We need people who can be a bit mobile in defence, because we don't want to be caught when the ball comes over the top. We love, you mentioned there, Aaron, a Segundo Volante. I love pairing them with an anchor or a halfback on FM23. A halfback's great on this game. They'll drop into that back, those centre-backs. So if I'm playing a back four, all of a sudden I've got three centre-backs, because the halfback drops as well. Again, big, strong, good jumping ability, anticipation. Because I kind of figured that, you know, we want to be difficult to break down as well. The Segundo Volante, I'm loving that energy in midfield. But the target forward that Joe's mentioning, here's one for you, Joe. I know you've said you want target forward. Potentially consider a complete forward instead, right? Because what I've got this philosophy here of explaining how I like football to be played. We went to Celtic, okay, and we had 3 centre-halves, we had no fullbacks, right? So we had to make a 3 at the back tactic. I've not really made a 3 at the back tactic on FM23 this year, okay? But it turns out what I made really matched my philosophy of how we want to be playing football. And it's the first time I've actually been the favourite in a league, okay? So we bought this guy, Chris Williams, he was called, okay? New gen, 21 years old from Dundee United, 6'6", jumping reach of 17, pace of 15, physically very strong, finishing of about 14 or something. Now, he was advertised in-game as target forward on support, but I thought, he's a bit more mobile. Let's get him as a complete forward, right? And what he does was he actually comes deep for the ball. He picks the ball up, which allows the shadow striker to move into the position where he was. Yeah. Now, once he picks the ball up, my wingers go beyond, the ball goes into the channels for them, and then he bombs to the back post to pick up whatever scraps is available. Now, in his first season at Celtic, he scored 28 goals, 35 assists in 52 games. So he's fine. he's fine. We brought him to Leeds very quickly.
Wow.
And like, I've never seen a player move that way. And just when you watch a player in game, he embodied TJ ball, which we'll start talking about our own tactics and stuff. And he just embodied it. He got the idea of moving a lot, being physical, being pacey, holding the ball up, waiting, and then when you get a chance, then break. And he's a stunning footballer. If only he was real, we'd be having a great.
It's funny how you always get those players, though, innit? It's like they seem to just, you kind of ignore their attributes because what you're seeing in the match engine is literally they're just doing everything. We've got this DM as well, and it's just like Secondo Volante, just everything that you want. And you look at his attributes, it's like he probably shouldn't be performing to this level, so let's just ignore the attributes. He's great.
Well, that's an interesting point as well, Aaron. And Steve, I'm going to come to you on this bit first. Now, we're talking here about a Segundo Volante, for example. Now, and players' attributes we've mentioned this eyeball test of looking at these players and go, they look like such and such. Now, in your philosophy, in producer Steve ball or Hanky ball or whatever it is we're gonna call it, right? Do you have roles and positions for players that you go, they are non-negotiables? Now, whether or not my players can play that role or not is irrelevant. Steve Ball needs a Segundo Volante. Steve Ball needs a deep line playmaker. Steve Ball needs a wide centre back. But so you're having to train these players that you've already got to go, look, I know you don't think you can play this role right now, but trust me, you will.
I'm torn between being context dependent, which you'll go into in a second, and saying, if you don't like these principles, I do have others. That's some of that line. But heart of hearts, dream scenario, definitely. And the best example I can think of actually is when I started on the Fiorentina save, we had Lucas Torreira as a ball-winning midfielder. Incredible in that position, would just help us out massively defensively. And when we were a team that had finished 13th in Serie A the previous season, we were looking and finished 5th. That was overachieving. An absolute fulcrum. I was going to say anchor, but anchor is obviously a position. I didn't mean anchor, but a fulcrum, crucial part of making that formation work, to the point that when we lost him because we couldn't afford the transfer fee at the time, big problem. However, I wanted to move on the technical level of the team, and I brought in Ivan Ilic, Yari Visharan, and Mohamed Kudus, who, by the way, Bryson getting him in real life is, they just do it so well. Yeah. So I basically transformed the 3-man midfield, and I brought in even Ilic to play deep line playmaker because Lucas Torreira just couldn't. And so that's probably the best example. My forward position does vary depending on context, from deep line forward to advance forward to sometimes 2 forwards as well. I do tend to, there's a couple of promising wingers that I have bought, but because I tend to invert both of my forwards, whether that's an inverted winger or a inverted forward, inside forward, sorry, they generally do the run from out to in rather than hugging the touchline, unless I fancy for 20 minutes, giving that a go, giving a bit of width down the right-hand side, liking multiple tools to try and win a game. So there have been, but the fundamental point is it's changing on the context. So, if we were talking off air before we recorded this about club vision and about the board's expectations. So where Fiorentina was, as an example, you kind of want to go for the results. So I was playing, and Lucas Torreira, as an example, was like 4.5 stars playing as a ball-winning midfielder in that position. So I was like, for where we are now, I'll play to the strengths of that individual because I want to get the results. I want to win. That worked. Get Champions League money, get better players. Then things do shift, because I'm looking at my club vision right now. Club culture says play entertaining football, and then you've got your importance, the status, etc. Importance preferred. Ongoing, work within wage budget. Importance required. So, again, end of the current season, Champions League, challenging for the Serie A. Importance required. Reach the quarterfinals, Champions League. Importance required. So increasingly, win the Serie A next season, I've only just noticed. Whilst also working within the wage budget and trying to outcompete, So you're starting to paint a picture of seeing where playing entertaining football, starts to drop down your priorities in terms of what your philosophy is.
Yeah,
Hence working on my set
Yeah,
pieces, hence trying to score from set pieces and having a target forward.
Yeah.
We've got an interesting bit at Leeds at the minute where the board are wanting us to be defensively solid, which normally works for me. I'm loving that. But the fans want free-flowing, exciting football. So thankfully, TJ Ball is quite free-flowing and exciting. And we'll get into the actual tactical specifics probably in next week's show. I think we'll start talking about what this philosophy looks like on the pitch. We'll get into the specifics of the roles and how we can get all this to work. What I'm going to ask though, Aaron, at this point for you is because you and I, we've spoken about this a lot, and this is the idea of DNA, isn't it? And building your team with a specific DNA in mind. Like for me, my DNA of any save at all relative to the league that we're in, the players have to have good work rate, they have to have good teamwork, they have to have good determination, and they've got to be fit. Okay, now that's the minimum standard I require. If those players can't match those 4 attributes, then they're not good for me at all, right? I want players who can just run all day, and we will outrun teams, like if we have to, because ability only gets you. Ability is great, but hard work is so much better, right? Now, that's for me. That's what I want. So that probably goes back to my agricultural roots. Okay, Aaron, what's your DNA?
If I'm totally honest, I do feel it depends on the save. So we had a save the AFC Wimbledon where it was those sorts of attributes where we really focused on it, and it was making sure the team can continue to press, but press throughout the game. So it was determination, stamina, work rate, teamwork, concentration. I found massively underappreciated in FM. I'm just sitting there, why are we conceding so many late goals? And then I go to my comparison screen. So the comparison screen, squad planner on the left-hand side, go to report once you reach the squad planner screen, and then comparison. And this is where I noticed, actually, my concentration level compared to the rest of the league was shocking, which then explains why we can press well for about 70 minutes and it starts to drop off, but the drop off is very noticeable. So that's why I focus on concentration. But now I'm in Romania, and again, I went to the same comparison screen, and again, I thought, hold on, this league is fairly slow. We could take advantage here. So now it's like, okay, everyone has to have a bit of pace to them, pace and determination. And I notice even if my players don't necessarily have that work rate, if they're still pressing high up, they can get to the ball or they can really pressure our fullback because my guy's faster than the fullback, is more agile. So just naturally, he can just get about quicker than the fullback would, or just the opposition's defenders. So that's what we're doing at the moment. And those long balls over the top. Oh boy, oh boy. Oh boy. Yeah. It's funny when he's fast and he's got no first touch and the ball bounces right off him. It's funny. That's funny. But at the same time, it's still, sometimes you can get that opening. He might lose the ball, but then again, I noticed that the second wave of attackers, those speedy guys coming in again, just winning the second ball, and then we can keep the attack on that way. So Football Manager is a very fluid game. I'm starting to notice that myself, even though I knew this before, but it can always continue to surprise you. And at the moment, I'm at that point where I was like, ooh, what we've got is nice. Speedy players. And that's how we're going to dominate the league.
Speed is king, especially in the lower leagues as well. A bit of speed, a bit of power, you're all right. But that's the lower leagues. Steve, what about elite level talents? I mean, here we are saying these are the must-haves, the key must-haves. But what about if you've got elite players? I mean, can you just go, but he's a good player, isn't he? Like, can you be a little bit more like leaning?
I think especially,
like Berbatov, for example,
And I think this again depends on the context in which you're operating in, right? So if you're doing the sort of save where you buy, wonder kid talent from probably South America or apparently Serbia, we discussed previously, and you get them in for 2.5 mil, and they're not necessarily. There's a line, isn't there? Really, if you're getting a player in that's you don't necessarily play with a big centre forward, and they are a big centre forward. How much do you what? Because on the one hand, you're going to get someone who's 30 foot, 40 goals. That's going to get you up the table the results you wouldn't have without them otherwise. You sell them for £80 million for the sake of argument. The question does then become: how do you then, if you've built your team around one elite individual, what on earth do you do when that individual then goes? Because it's not as simple as overnight trying to change a system. The game is built to have cohesion.
Like for like, can you?
No, exactly. So it is a bit of a But then equally, there's elements to which, if that elite individual talent progresses you up into the Champions League, into that sort of football and the money you get from that, you can then maybe use that money to take you back towards the philosophy that you wanted to. So, case in point from guess which save, Fiorentina. There was a summer that we had early on. There was a summer that we had where we sold Bartolomeu Dragowski for, I think it was 70 million to Bayern, and then about a week later sold Dusan Vlahovic for 90 million to Liverpool, and then incidentally Jeremy Boga for 17 million because of the release clause. But there you go. So anyway, it meant that we had like 100. This is terrible maths. I'm just off the top of my head, but something stupid like 150, 160 million pounds. But equally, the spine had been ripped out of the team. So as we were touching on transfers, we want to talk about how you do these philosophies on a journeyman save or long-term saves. On the long-term save, that transfer window allowed me to go back to a more technically based route. So I replaced Dragowski with Mike Mannion, established experienced keeper, 15 million quid, absolute bargain. Replaced Vlahovic with Duvan Zapata, again 15 million, unbelievable bargain. They're experienced players, and then spent about, I think it was 60 to 70 million in total to buy Ivan Illich, Mohamed Kudus, and Yeri Vasharin. Completely replaced my midfield, raised the technical level of that midfield to fundamentally get towards playing the football I wanted to play. So again, it depends on the sort of save, how far along. When it comes to philosophy, when it comes to long-term vision, you do need to think about the type of save you're going to have. And I'd actually argue that a longer-term save means that you can really embed the philosophy that you do want to play over seasons.
And that's the thing, I think. And again, that is absolutely got to be an episode in the future, isn't it? Like the evolution of your philosophy and the idea of, as you say, you have to just sell those players and reinvest that money, whether you want to sell that player or not. For the greater good, you sell a big player. Can you get like for like, or do you, as you do there, Steve, rebuild your entire midfield with the money you'd had for your centre forward? So that's absolutely a great talking point going forward, and one that we will do in the future. Just a quick one, just while this episode's on. I hope you're enjoying it, by the way. And if you are enjoying it, please consider hitting that like button. That'd be much appreciated. It shows us who's enjoying the episodes. And also, while you're there, why not consider hitting the subscribe button as well? You'll find out exactly when all the new episodes drop, so you'll never miss a beat. That, of course, pushes us up through the YouTube algorithm. It gets us in front of more eyes. And, of course, the more the podcast grows, the better it's going to be. There's also a little space for a comment, so leave us a comment. We love reading them, and we will, of course, get back to you as well. And speaking about getting back, let's get back to the episode. Now, as always, we haven't covered everything with philosophy, but if you've got any questions or any comments to make on how you instill a philosophy at your club, then, of course, do get in touch, which, of course, brings us nicely to the mailbag time. Now, Steve, as we've pointed out before, you are in charge of said mailbag. And in this mailbag, we found our first FM confessional of the season. Now, would you like to explain what an FM confessional is for our newer listeners?
Yes. So this is a feature that was first found in our previous parish, my son. And there are things we can do in the game sometimes. It's a rage-inducing, stress-inducing sometimes game. It can make us do things that we once the fog of Football Manager war lifted, we can reflect on and not be proud of ourselves. You might say we can commit sins. And there's only one place that you can go once you've committed a Football Manager sin, and that is to the Football Manager confessional. So you're most welcome here, my son. And any sins, whether it's a scum save, whether it's the worst one we had of a previous era was a friend playing Real Madrid and Barcelona with their friend online in the same room, and they were losing. Their friend went to the toilet. This person renamed players in the save, like Javier Saviola as was, with youth players. And so their friend couldn't understand what was going on. That was bad. That's a bad one. And it's illustrative, but they came and they sought forgiveness, and you can do the same, listeners, viewers. You can do the same. Salvation, absolution is here. So our first confessant, I think that's right, might not be. First person to enter the FN confessional of this new era is Watoza, who sent their missive in to the Discord. And Watoza writes.
That's just the first line got me as well.
He's fully committed.
Fully committed.
Fully committed.
Father, forgive me, for I have sinned. That's okay.
I tried to hold it. I was waiting.
That's okay, my son. This is his first real FM save as well. He didn't say how long it's been since his last confession, but we'll forgive him that particular thing because there are more to come.
Mm-hmm.
In my first real save, which I started in the dying days of FM22, I chose Sheffield Wednesday. As a Liverpool supporter, I was then interested in the wider English football culture, getting into the Liverpool heydays, etc., and liking the history and realizing that Sheffield Wednesday were a sort of fallen giant in terms of English football. We should say Watoza is writing from the States, so he's learning about the history of English clubs via Football Manager, which I think is great as well. But anyway, back to his sins. Yeah. One thing that frustrated me was trying to understand registration rules, signings and the like, especially as an American, was the effects of Brexit. Unwilling to understand the nuances of such a complex policy, that is one way of describing... This isn't a foreign affairs podcast, but complex policy is one way of describing Brexit. Anyway, Watoza downloaded a patch that removed Brexit from the game. Now, from there, I made some shrewd sales. The peak was selling off Barry Ballon d'Or Bannon, a favourite from the Community Challenge of last season, and recruiting foreign players from Brazil, Argentina, which meant that Sheffield Wednesday repeated aforementioned history, winning the League Cup and the Championship. As a Championship side, getting the team all the way through a full Championship season. Remember how long they are in the Football League: 46 games, 2 cup runs, qualification, group stage of the Europa Conference League, because obviously winning the League Cup would get you into the Europa Conference League. That was one of our, if you remember correctly,
would have got you a gold or platinum.
Very precious metal was that one.
Had he done it with local players, yeah,
exactly. That might be a quartz medal. We were making them up. The rules were a shambles. That who knows?
Palladium.
What's Wolverine's one? Adamantium. There you go. Yeah. Sadly, that story they lost to Antwerp in the second knockout round. Anyway. Since that particular save, which is where the first sin began, there's some potential, salvation or mediation if they'd have stopped there. However, Watoza did not. On FN23, stuck with... Actually, Watoza has possibly already start to absolve themselves of their sins, because since the save, they moved on to FN23, accepted Brexit, which many of us in the UK have not actually. So you've done more than others, Watoza. And the sort of slightly relaxed English point system for non-English trained players. But as someone who wants to truly experience success in the game, I must confess how my greatest achievement came to be built on a bed of Brexit-removed lies.
Lies, absolute lies. And you saw Barry Bannon. That's the bit I take exception with.
That's 2 wrongs.
Yes. So the question now becomes, as listeners to the pod more historically will know, of what Watoza's penance is. So he doesn't specify which save that he is on FN23. But I'm sometimes he knows he's done wrong. He's acted differently in the future on future saves. Sometimes you could argue what maybe fundamentally, whether you like the rules or not, if you choose to play the game, you have to follow them. And the fact that you wrote in, Watoza, you wrote in, so you know this is wrong. So, registration rules that he overcame, I think, will have to be retrospectively reinstated on his current save. So he's going to have to limit himself 2 players that he would have been able to that are English, that are fine in terms of registration rules as a penance for the players in the past that he got where he shouldn't have been able to get. 2 players. I'm going to go for English players, however many of them you have in the squad. Ability-wise, your mid-ranking best English player, and your, which way am I going to go? Am I going to go up or down? And your lower quarter. Oh, okay. We're going up, are we?
For the audio listeners at this point, both myself and Aaron were pointing skywards. We wanted top ranking players. Yeah, you can't just decide, to flout political policy and go, right, I don't like the rules, so there.
Yeah.
Okay, well, unfortunately, with Tozer, this is a democracy, and I have been outvoted. Therefore, you are going to have to, for a season, you cannot use your best English player and your mid-ranking English player. Okay?
Punishment fits the crime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. That is your penance. And after a season, you can have them back. Or if you decide you can't have them for a year, it's better to sell them. Do what you will. But that is your penance. Do let us know how that has gone, who that was, what the consequences were. But to be clear, 2 English players you cannot use for a season, your best English player, and let's say you have 20 in your squad, your 10th English player as well. Those 2 players you can't use, whichever one fits in the middle. If it's 16, your 8th best player. Can't use for a season, do what you will with them for that. But that is your penance. That is... Maybe this is why this has been the first confession we've had for a while, because I get vengeful. I sort of,
To be fair, Steve, you were being nice. It was myself and Aaron that were like, punish him.
That's true.
Well,
That's true.
Like,
yeah.
It's because what done it for me is getting into Europe. That is way too massive for me.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. The irony of it as well, getting into Europe by erasing Brexit from that particular universe.
Yeah. What you should do, all of your European games should only be played in Grimsby. There you go. All matches should be.
Sure, there's a mod for that. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, Aaron's busy releasing his goalkeeper because he conceded a goal. Like, I think we have to be looking to punish. So yes, we're told that your punishment has been served. Appreciate you, of course, getting in touch. Yes. And what I was going to say as well, Steve, last week we had a whamathon with puns. I think for the FM confession, we should play. Obviously, we can't for copyright reasons, but we should play "It's a Sin" by the Pet Shop Boys. So there you go.
Yes, one for the kids.
And speaking of which, from confessions to concertos, Matthew Lester, who is one of our patrons, sent us a post on Twitter that says, "I've been managing Southport FC on Football Manager, and I keep singing." Now, Steve, you might have to help me out on this one. We're going to rock down to Hague Avenue to the tune of Electric Avenue by Eddie Grant.
So we're going to rock down to Hague Avenue. There's a missing beat, like it's syllable in the thing, but you take a pause and it works.
Yeah.
It's fine. It's fine. And Matthew also says he feels that this should be the tune that the teams run out to. So, I mean, that's... Fine.
I get it.
He's tagged everybody in it as well, so hopefully that'll be a thing. Yeah,
Southport. So just sorry, Tony. So Hague Avenue. Obviously, Avenue is the name of the ground, hence why Electric Avenue came up in his head.
Yeah.
Also known as IRL, the Big Help Stadium for the 23-24. Due to a sponsorship deal, I imagine. So that's Southport in Merseyside. Big Help.
Wow. We also heard from Musterman, who makes incredible skins for Football Manager. I once reworded Cycle Killer to be about Sassuolo in FM22. Was so proud of myself. Nobody, and I mean nobody, enjoyed it. So he's going to sing this one.
So that was.
I think it's going to be Steve again, isn't
Let me
it?
just get the lyrics up again. Where have we gone? So it's Sassuolo. Is that Sassuolo? Qu'est-ce que c'est? Yeah. Again, one for the kids.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
No.
Yeah. If any Talking Heads fans in, do get in touch.
If you're a Talking Heads fan and you have heard of the internet, then
yeah.
then
Also, that didn't sound so much like a chant, more like a sort of you know how you teach yourself a foreign language audiobook. It sounded a bit like that.
Sassuolo, qu'est-ce que c'est?
Yeah, exactly.
There we go. Anyway, I think, as Masterman said, there are 3 people who have been added to that list of nobody enjoying it. So there we go. On the money.
On the money, right? If you wish to correspond with us in the same way that that Matthew has done, in the same way that Watoz has done, feel free to contact us via social media, which is the FM Show Pod on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and of course the Discord server as well. Or for those longer correspondence, send us an email at the FM Show Pod. That is the FM Show Pod at gmail.com. And of course, remember to subscribe to the podcast, The FM Show, wherever you get your podcasts. That was episode 4 of the FM Show, hosted by myself, Tony Jameson. My co-host was Aaron Falloon, aka RDF Tactics. Our producer is producer Steve. We will see you all next time.